And then the editor made the best edit of all time and saved the film. The film studio was so happy they bought him a pizza. The film became a gigantic hit and the editor won an Oscar. The end. Wasn't that a great story, Banjo? Banjo may not be that impressed by great editing, but I am. And in this episode of Doc Mechanic, we're going to talk editing. Which nonlinear editing system is best? How many monitors can I have running at once? How best to integrate AI into my editing? All these questions and more, I don't give a shit about. What I'm going to talk about is, once again, not sexy. It's really boring. That's right, no gear, just theory. Sorry, maybe one of these days I'll do a gear video. What do you think, Banjo? Gear video? I mean, can one really have too many firewire cables? I mean, look at the DV technology here. You know, I think 16mm film is going to be making a comeback for documentary production. Who will ever need more storage than this? Not going to happen. Now I'm going to be talking about one of the, if not the best job anywhere, documentary editing. Now in these highly technical times, most people understand what video editing is, and if you're watching this channel, you've probably done some editing, right, Banjo? Today we're talking about the basics of doc editing. If you've cut a couple of docs, you might already know most of this, unless you want to hear how I do things, which that's fair. I like hearing editors talk about how they do things. You never know what you can pick up. A lot of this info might be more for people just starting out, trying to make a bigger doc project. Maybe you made a few doc shorts and now you shot some stuff and you think you've got a feature doc on your hands. And maybe you don't have much money, but you've got time. So you're going to do some of the editing yourself. A feature-length doc is a bit of a beast and way different than you might expect. This might also be for people interested in actually being a doc editor. What does it take? How is it different from other kinds of editing? Anywho, doc editing can kind of be divided up into three parts: the actual editing, communicating, and storytelling. So the editing part is about 50% of your job, and honestly, it's not that hard. Take out the crap, keep the good stuff, smash some things together, add music, call it a day. I mean, you can do a pretty decent job editing on your phone these days, so not complicated. It can be tedious, it can be aggravating getting the timing right or trying to figure out that one effect you want to do, but you'll get it if you've got enough patience. But that's only the basics of editing. In documentaries, it gets a little more complicated because it's not just about the editing, pushing the buttons. You see, in docs, the editor is the hub. Just about everything revolves around them. Think of a bike wheel, and all the spokes are materials that you use to tell the story. This spoke is original shoot footage. This spoke is music. This spoke is weird cell phone footage someone shot that really fits in. This spoke is old black and white archival, and so on. It's the editor's job to pull all this together, and it's a huge responsibility, requiring mastery or at least knowledge of a dozen different skill sets. But that's the challenge. Just like a novelist has to create a whole world around his story, the editor has to create the world of the film. Is it fast-paced or slow? Is the music loud or soft? Who do we see first? How do we introduce our topics? Let's list the responsibilities of the doc editor. You have to cut scenes. You have to help create structure. You have to pick some, if not all, the temp music to edit, and then sometimes pick songs that are going to be in the film. You have to write the first pass of voiceover. You have to put in temp IDs and location graphics. You have to find some archival and rip music and videos off the internet. You have to find holes in the structure and help plan out possible shoots. You have to temp in little infographic movies and plan out possible larger animations. And sometimes you even have to go on set and let people know what you need. If this sounds like a lot, understand that I've also left out a ton. This is just the stuff I can remember off the top of my head. Yes, it is a lot, but it's also what makes stock editing fun and exciting. Remember, having control and creative input is why you're here. All this aren't problems you have to deal with, they're challenges that you're excited to conquer. Now, doc editors have a lot of different methods for digging in and starting an edit. Some of these may be dictated by your own preferences, and some may be dictated by outside forces like money, time, access, or even energy. Are they still shooting? Are they completely done? Did they shoot a bit and run out of money? What is your job? Are you here to put a film together or figure out what more needs to be done? These are all questions that sit in the background, influencing but not determining what you do and how you go about doing it. The first step, no matter what, is to see what you've got. But doc editors, in some ways, we're lucky. We usually know what kind of film we're working on before we start. Maybe it's a cult thing, maybe it's a verite doc about an event, maybe it's a rock doc. Our biggest question usually is, will the footage get us to our destination? But first you have to see what you've got. So you start watching. So you watch what footage you have. Now, some editors like to watch all the footage or a large percentage before they start editing. They figure, how can I make any decisions until I see what I have to work with? And that's a good point. That, however, is not how I like to approach things. If your film is the best sound bites from 100 interviews, sure. But if it's not 100 interviews, I talk to the director. I talk to the assistant editor, who, by the way, should be your bestest friend in the whole world, as they are your lifeline to the footage. They've seen things. They've had to go through the footage. They know where the good stuff is hidden. I like to get a quick overview of the material, watch a little from everything, get the flavor of things, so to speak, see what the style of the shooting is, who comes across well, who doesn't. Basically, what's grabbing me. And then, if it grabs me enough, why not start putting something together? There's no rules. There's no one with a ruler waiting to bash you on the knuckles. So if I start with what's interesting to me, I find that eventually I end up going through the rest of the footage in the course of editing, of looking for other shots, or wondering what else happened. I don't find being so systematic helps my creativity, but I understand that I can be a bit unusual when it comes to how I do things. What works for me may not work for you. Remember that. So I've learned I can watch footage for about 3 days before my trigger finger starts getting itchy. But honestly, I usually start at the end of the first day. Just beginning to start moving some stuff around. Here's where a lot of doc people might say that editing is made up of agonizing editorial choices. Which shot? How long to hang on a frame? Are the cuts fast or slow? What's the rhythm of the scene? And those people aren't wrong. It's all important. But here, I'm going to say that at this stage, I kind of just like to get some stuff edited to see if it's even working. You can and will go back dozens of times to tweak these edits and scenes. Don't get hung up on the details at this point. At this stage, it's all about just getting some stuff done. I can spend hours talking about the differences between cutting assemblies and finishing a film, but now's not the time. We're just slapping some stuff together. It's all good. Just get it watchable. Now you may be asking, what am I editing? See, a lot of what we do as editors is create scenes. Here's where I'm going to say to watch a previous video about creating scenes. I like to say that this process is very organic, that the footage kind of tells me what's going on. Of course, you should have an idea in your head about what the eventual film should be, but the details, they're all up in the air. So I've got a few scenes. Who are your characters? What's your themes? Is there a plot? What's the point in all this? Think about these questions when you're watching. Hey, let's just start putting them in an order of some kind. What feels better? Why does this scene feel better before that scene, but maybe this third scene feels like the actual beginning of a film? Maybe this could work. Well, you begin stringing all these scenes together. This is called an assembly. Usually it's something that happens when you've reached a critical mass of material and you have enough to cut down so it's at least an hour of halfway decent scenes. Now, I've seen assemblies be 30 minutes, all the way up to a mind-numbing 5.5 hours, which is one good way to lose your will to live. This is the assembly. You look at it and puke. You and the rest of the team compare notes and figure out what the hell you've got that doesn't totally suck, and then you wander the streets getting blackout drunk. Assemblies are bad, but they're supposed to be bad. That's the point. But hopefully there's a kernel of hope there, and that gives you enough juice to get back into the chair and begin hacking your way through the mess. And that's kind of how it goes for the next few months. Editing, puking, editing, puking. It's a great career. I totally recommend it. 10 out of 10. And that's just the actual editing part. There's also the 40% of your job, that's your interpersonal skills. How well do you work with people? It's one thing to edit in your room by yourself, but if you want to take a step up, you'll need to work with other people. And sometimes people who have ideas or are paying the bills sometimes seem to you to act erratically and make decisions that don't make any sense. How do you handle any or all of these situations? Do you argue? Do whatever they want? Walk out if you disagree? A lot of editors kind of push back when I tell them that interpersonal skills are such a big part of editing, but it's about what you want out of your career, right? If you only edit your own stuff, great. You can be a cannibal and no one would care. But try being a cannibal in an edit room with a bunch of other people. You probably won't get hired again. Obviously, being a cannibal is worst case scenario when it comes to dealing with other people. But honestly, you don't have to eat someone's leg to get them to not want to work with you. At this point in my career, I'd say 90% of the work I get is people I've worked with already or referrals from those people. The most important thing, besides not eating your coworkers, is don't be an asshole. Be confident, but not, well, an asshole. Have opinions, but realize other people might have ideas that can be as good, or the horror, better than yours. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. The editor does not have the market cornered on good ideas, right, Banjo? Don't take your editing personally. If people are criticizing your cut, they're not criticizing you. I know it's hard sometimes to separate yourself from your work because a good editor really throws themselves into it. But it's not you, it's just edits. And if things don't work out, you can always hit undo. That's right, don't be an asshole. And then there's dealing with notes. That's going to have to be a whole separate video because that's a minefield filled with alligators. Let's just say you're going to have to figure out how both to give notes and take them. And then, most importantly, how to interpret the notes. Who are the notes coming from? The director, producer, studio, spouse? Each one has their own flavor of crazy that you have to deal with and figure out. Good times. And then you work your way towards a very rough cut, then a pretty good rough cut, and then a fine cut, and then finally a locked cut. After a couple of screening at film festivals, seeing the film with real humans as opposed to friends and coworkers, you realize that it has so much more work that needs to happen that you open it back up and redo stuff. Getting it right takes time and patience because you're telling a story. If someone wanted just the facts, they could read a textbook or maybe a magazine article. So why is this a movie? So that you can reach a larger audience and tell a story. And that's the last 10%. I didn't forget about that. This 10%, it's not really about editing at all. It's the storytelling part. I mean, yeah, technically it's editing, but practically, not really. When you hear people talking about editors and editing, and they say that when it comes to docs, that the film's made in the edit room, or when editors sometimes get writing or co-directing credit, this is why. This 10%. Sometimes as an editor, you don't really have the opportunity to flex that storytelling muscle. Maybe the film's mostly cut and you just need to polish it up. Maybe it's too early and they just need to get scenes cut to see what they've got. Maybe the director and producers have a really tight handle on the film and you just need to execute the vision. But once in a while, the opportunity lands in your lap. No one has an idea. Everyone looks at you, the editor, seeking answers. Now's your chance. Speak up. And this is where the 50% editing ability and 40% communication skills merge in some weird Vulcan mind meld thing. Because you have to be able to use your edit skills to pull off what you're saying. And you have to be able to communicate what these ideas are to people who may not really want to hear them, even though they say they do. So you have to sell them on your vision. You have to be the storyteller. You have to convince them that your way is the right way. Not easy, but doable. And also why you're here. What you say is important. Have real solutions to actual problems, not things you'd like to see if you were making the film, or ragging on the director or others for not getting the footage you need. No, your job is to offer solutions. And in docs, there's all kinds of problems. But we'll just focus on a couple that are what usually directly impacts the editor. First, plot holes. Who is this person? What are they doing here? Why is this scene important? These kinds of issues are two-stage problems. The first is figuring out that there is a problem, and the second is coming up with a solution. And what are the solutions? Well, it depends on your situation. The best thing is to find an editorial solution, because more shooting is always only a last resort. So can you use archival to do what you need? Is there previously shot footage that can be repurposed? Or maybe some outtakes that can be tweaked to work? Maybe it's time for a handy infographic. These are just some of the obvious solutions. There's dozens of possibilities based on the type of film you're working on and the type of footage and materials you have available to you. Now, all these decisions aren't or shouldn't be yours. The director, the producers, even the subjects can have input, but it all runs through you. So take on that responsibility, own it, be the storyteller, and remember, this is the best job in documentaries. Okay, if you like this, smash that like button, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, or don't. That's totally okay. So, documentary mechanic here saying goodbye, and his trusty assistant Banjo. So long now.